Hey everyone, Eric here. Just before we get to today's show, I want to let you know that we're offering our podcast listeners a special 20% lifetime discount to the China Africa Daily Brief. Now that's the newsletter that Cobus and I produce every day that provides the most comprehensive digest of everything China's doing on the continent and now increasingly throughout the global south. In addition to the newsletter, you'll also get full archive access to the website and the China Africa Experts Network as well. To get that discount, just go to chinaafricaproject.com/subscribe and use the promo code podcast at checkout. Once again, that's chinaafricaproject.com/subscribe.
The China in Africa podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Africa-China Reporting Project at Wits University in Johannesburg. The ACRP aims to improve the quality of reporting on Africa-China relations through reporting grants, workshops, and other opportunities for journalists. More information at africachinareporting.co.za and our dedicated training website at africachinatraining.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the China in Africa podcast, a proud member of the Syndicate Network from SupChina. I'm Eric Olander, and as always, I'm joined by Cobus van Staden, the senior China-Africa researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs in Johannesburg, South Africa. A very good afternoon to you, Cobus.
Good afternoon.
Cobus, holy moly, the big story of the day is actually the big story of the week, the month, the summer has been the China-DRC relationship. Not even close. This is by far the most important geopolitical relationship that China has in Africa today. So much is happening there so fast. It's interesting because our newsletter and the content on our website for the past few weeks has been almost 50% China-DRC. And the feedback that I'm getting from folks is, give me more, give me more, give me more. And we do have to balance it out with other stories that we're covering, but there's just so much that's been unfolding. And a lot has happened over the past week, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I think before we get too deep into it, I want to take everybody back to middle May, early June, when this all began. And this is when Congolese President Félix Tshisekedi went out to Kolwezi in a very famous trip. Now, it's an infamous trip now. And he went out to Sicomines. And it was very interesting because what he did at the Sino-Congolese joint venture mining is he told them right to their face, I mean literally to their face, that this is not going to stand, that the contracts and the relationship over the mines has to be reevaluated and rethought. Now, it's very important to mention, as we're going to talk about the Sino-Congolese mining contracts here, that the Congolese government itself, and President Tshisekedi in particular, has not singled out the Chinese specifically. They're saying foreign mining contracts. But when we're talking about foreign mining contracts in the DRC, that invariably leads to the Chinese doorstep because 60% of the foreign mines in the DRC are Chinese, and many of them are some of the largest in the world. And the two contracts that the Congolese have gone after, the first for review, one is Sicomines, which is the $9 billion Sino-Congolese mining deal that was then downgraded to a $6 billion deal, and also the China-Mali deal in the TFM mine. So these are two they went right with the big ones. But let's go back to that visit to Kolwezi in the mining belts. That's the copper and cobalt belts in the eastern and southern zones of the DRC. And let me play you a soundbite from this conversation. It's in French. Let me just paint the picture for you what's happening here. This is the big man himself, Félix Tshisekedi, standing over the Director General of Sicomines, Li Sheng. And he's standing face-to-face, surrounded by dozens of people. And he's telling Li that along the roads to the mines, there were no schools. None of the development that you promised is here. And he goes on to say, we want a partnership with you, but you have to understand that the village down there that I passed by was totally deserted. There was nothing there. And I'm translating the quote here. So we have to build things. And that's the partnership we want, so you prosper and we prosper. This is what Tshisekedi's telling Li. But we don't want to see the day where this relationship ends and were left, with his word, with cadavers. Very interesting choice of words there. Now, since that interaction back in May and June, late May, early June, it has just taken off all summer, leading up into the fall now with a series of horrific videos that have been coming out, really illustrating the difficulties that the Chinese have had in the Congo relating to horrific violence of their managers of the mining companies like China Moly at the TFM mine towards their local employees, environmental abuses by Chinese mining companies, and also just one negative media coverage after another. But it appears just this past week or so that Chinese mining companies, together with the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing and the embassy in Kinshasa, all appear now to be pushing back and putting out an alternative narrative. So let me just run you through a few of the things that have happened in just the past week. And this is how the story has changed and where we're going to pick up the conversation today. Let's start with this news site, actualité.cd, which is one of the large Congolese news sites. They're really one of the leading news sites. They are now flush with details about Chinese mining activities. And this is a little bit of a surprise because anybody who knows Chinese companies, especially state-owned mining companies, knows full well that these companies have been very, very opaque, very secretive. They don't like to reveal details. But over the past week now, suddenly, there is just details about their financial activities all over the press. So they ran a story over the weekend about how the TFM mine, which again is owned by China Moly, that's a cobalt and copper mine, paid $3.6 billion in taxes since 2006. Interestingly, though, Actualité.cd did not say how they came about that information. Then they ran a story last Wednesday headlined, and you'll like this, the Chinese company Zhuoshi Mining is abiding by the DRC mining code for the benefit of the community. The story goes on to say how the company's donated 0.3% of its revenue to local development initiatives. Okay, that's interesting. Now, on the same day that story ran in Actualité.cd, the Zhuoshi Mining Company also permitted a pro-Kabila social media influencer who published videos from the mine and said, and I'm going to quote here from his tweet, "Yesterday, I visited the Zhuoshi Mining Company in Lubumbashi. Contrary to claims made by foreign journalists about Chinese-owned mining companies, Zhuoshi Mining paid $17 million in taxes for the year 2020. He then went on to detail how the company spent $24 million building schools, hospitals, and training centers for the local community. Again, it's just interesting that in 1 week, all of these details have blossomed. But wait, there's more. And just before all of this transparency unfolded online and in the media, Congolese mining minister Antoinette Nsamba Kalambayi went out to do site inspections of a number of different mines, including big Chinese mining companies in the copper and cobalt zones, both in the east and the south of the country. She visited some of the largest mines who feted her on Facebook and Twitter. I mean, really, it was fun to watch. We put a couple of those images in the newsletter. The two that I was able to track that she went to was the large Comus mine, which is owned by the Chinese mining giant Zijin, and then also the Lualaba Copper Smelting Company, which is also owned by the Chinese mining giant China Non-Ferrous Mining Corporation. Now, on the China Non-Ferrous Mining Corporation corporate website in Hong Kong, they touted the visit and included a quote from the minister that said, and I'm quoting here from their take on this, "I feel very satisfied and assured that employees work here!" Exclamation point. One other very important point. It appears that the Chinese government is also getting its talking points in order. So what we talked about were the mining companies. But last Monday, that's on the 13th of September, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian, he held a press briefing and he was asked a question about the DRC mining situation by a journalist at AFP. And he opened his response with this phrase, and it's very important. The infrastructure for minerals package cooperation between China and the DRC is a model of practical cooperation between the two countries. Now, when I first heard that, I thought, okay, that's a pretty unremarkable piece of Chinese public diplomacy or propaganda or whatever you want to call it. I didn't really think too much of it. Then, interestingly, over the weekend, China's top diplomat for sub-Saharan Africa, Wu Peng, he tweeted out a tweet about a new hydroelectric dam, and in it he said, under the Infrastructure for Minerals Package Cooperation between China and the DRC. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. This is the talking point that they're rallying around. We see this time and time and time again. What the Chinese do is they, oftentimes when they're under pressure, they pull back, they wait, they figure out their talking point. Once they've got their talking point, they just hit it hard over and over and over again. The last time we saw this in the African context was during the Guangzhou discrimination issues back in April 2020. And that is when, again, for 2 or 3 days after the situation broke out, you didn't hear anything from the Chinese. And then you heard their established line. There is no discrimination in China. The Chinese treat everybody the same. That was the stock answer. I suspect this is going to be the stock answer in the DRC crisis that they're facing right now. Cobus, the point here is that